Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is the 1st of September 2022. And these are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of the show. As you very well know, the devastation has hit Pakistan as far as the aftermath of the floods is concerned. The spokesperson of the Foreign Office in his statement today talked about the casualties. He said over 1,100 people, including 350 children, have lost their lives. 1,600 people have been injured. Over 1 million houses have been partially or completely destroyed. Entire villages wiped out. 735 livestock has perished. Over 2 million acres of crops have been lost. And this is just a part of the devastation, because as time goes by, we'll know about more devastation, more lives that have been lost as an aftermath of these heinous rains and the floods that have wreaked havoc all over the country. This is going to be our first segment, and also the relief and rehabilitation efforts that are going on, the different countries that are participating to help Pakistan come out of this huge calamity. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the first anniversary of the martyrdom of Syed Ali Geelani, icon of freedom of Kashmiris, also known as Baba-e-Hurriyat. Whether it be the DGISPI, whether it be the Prime Minister, both have paid glowing tributes to Mr. Gillani, and there's also going to be a march today. There was a march, in fact, today to highlight the sacrifices made by Mr. Gillani for the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and their people and the Kashmir cause. This is going to be our second segment. Let's begin with our first story, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns the floods, the devastation as an aftermath of these floods, and the different countries that are helping Pakistan in the relief and rehabilitation efforts. More in the following report.
Monsoon rains have submerged a third of Pakistan, unleashing powerful floods that have washed away swaths of vital crops and damaged more than 1 million homes. The International Water Management Institute's assessment based on satellite imagery revealed that around 47% of Pakistan's total area is inundated. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres called it a monsoon on steroids as he launched an international appeal for the country of $160 million in emergency funding. According to government officials, more than 33 million people are affected, and the rehabilitation will cost more than $10 billion. Civil-military coordination is assuring to rescue stranded villagers and tourists, as well as delivering aid to flood victims. Climate Change Minister Sharif Rahman stated that at least $10 billion would be required to rebuild climate-resilient infrastructure to mitigate the impacts of global warming. A report by World Health Organization sounded alarm as it revealed that 6.4 million people are in dire need of humanitarian aid. Amnesty International stated that states that have enriched themselves using fossil fuels must provide compensation and other forms of remedy for the loss and damage people are suffering in Pakistan. Expressing solidarity with flood victims, Pakistan Army postponed the Defense Day ceremony at General Headquarters, and ISPR Chief Major General Babar Iftikhar said that Pakistan Armed Forces shall continue serving our brothers and sisters struck by unprecedented floods.
We'll return with more details on this and more, but after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and to discuss the devastation caused by the floods, the rescue and relief operations that are going on, spearheaded by the government of Pakistan as well as our armed forces and different NGOs and different countries as well that are providing relief to Pakistan in this hour of need. We've been joined by Wardah Noor. She's the founder of KhudKaar, that is an NGO. Wardah, thank you very much to have joined us. Wardah, in this time of devastation, where the entire Pakistan is submerged under water, at least most of it is, and the number of the crops or the people or the livestock that has been destroyed, people who've lost their lives, who have been injured in this, what amount of effort is needed, and how should this effort be streamlined?
Much for inviting me today. So I think we already know that 33 millions of Pakistanis are impacted due to these flood situation. So what needs to be done is cannot be done by the on-ground organization or the government alone. So we are already seeing the collaboration between civil and military forces. We are also seeing that the donations are coming from the international community as well. So it will take a lot efforts from different organizations within Pakistan and outside Pakistan to rehabilitate these people. But what needs to be done to streamline these efforts is we need to work on data. So we need to have a centralized database. So the efforts that we are doing in our individual capacities and the government is doing is streamlined, and the relief goes to the right people. So my team is working with the IC, which is the Institute of Emerging Careers, and they are working on this data. So they are also in touch with the military forces. They're also in touch with the civil government to create that centralized data system. So we reach to the right people. And after we have that data centralized, the next phase is to provide immediate ration relief, which the government is already working on. So we need to provide that immediate ration, food, and other everyday essentials, especially for women. We need to provide them sanitary napkins and other everyday needs. Then comes the third phase, where we need to plan for the long term, and we need to we need to take care of the what is coming. So we need to rehabilitate these 33 million people as well. So we are working on a system where we can provide them affordable housing once this flood situation is handled somehow. So it needs to be done in three different ways. One, we need to work on data. The other, we need to provide the immediate relief. And the third is we need to work on the long-term plan to rehabilitate these people, to give them homes, to give them jobs once this situation is handled. So yeah, that's all that I want to say.
Whether you talk about the short-term and the long-term measures, and of course, it's going to be a long road ahead as far as those people who've been affected, the scores of people who've been affected due to these unprecedented rains and the floods. How committed is the private sector? How committed are organizations such as yours? And how much do you feel is the government and the armed forces also committed to bring that relief and the long-term measures to the people of Pakistan?
Okay, so I think that the Pakistani people have always been very generous in terms of providing relief to the wider communities. We saw that during the COVID lockdown, everyone came forward and we fought the crisis together. So I think private organizations are very committed at this moment. Even the individuals who are working on the ground, the individual volunteers, they are very mobilized. So people are going door to door to help in whatever capacity they can. Same goes for the civil government and the military forces, which are working on maybe the long-term plans. They are working with the international organizations to bring in funds to rehabilitate these people. So there are efforts going on, but I still feel that there are gaps between the private sector and the government and the military forces. So there needs to be combined efforts from all these three departments. So the funds that go to the communities, they're not dispersed in an uneven way. So we need that centralized effort. We need the collaboration of all these three departments. But as far as the commitment is concerned, I think private organizations and the individuals are very committed to this. And we Pakistani people, we have always proved that we come to the rescue for our communities when there is a crisis. So yeah.
All right. Further, Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, calls this a monsoon on steroids. He also says that this is a warning sign for all the different countries across the world that climate change is something real and they need to take care of it before it's too late, and that the effects affect their respective countries now that they are seeing the example in Pakistan. Also, we see different countries that are helping Pakistan. We are seeing the latest, as far as the latest efforts are concerned, the United Kingdom providing 15 million pounds to Pakistan, France giving different kinds of measures and providing the necessary items to Pakistan, Thailand giving money, the United Arab Emirates sending planes full of goods for Pakistan, so many other countries, China, Bahrain, and there's a huge list of countries that are helping. The United States of America has also given a certain amount of money to Pakistan. How important is the commitment by the international bodies to help Pakistan out of this crisis?
I think their commitment is very important because right now we need immediate funds. But I also believe these funds and all the help that's coming from international organizations enough. Communities, including China and USA, need to acknowledge that it's their CO2 emissions which have led Pakistan to a climate emergency. So Pakistan does not emit such huge levels of carbon dioxide. So international all these international organizations who are worried about the current climate situation. They need to work on the long-term plans to reduce the use of fossil fuel, to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide. So the countries in the south are not affected. So the north side of the world needs to acknowledge their mistake. They need to work on reducing their emissions as well, instead of just providing support when the crisis
They
comes. So
need
we
to
need
work
some
internally as well
long-term
in their
plans from
respective
their end
countries to
as well.
reduce carbon
But
emissions. This is what you're trying to say, Wardah.
thanks to them that they're providing relief in such critical time. Yeah.
All right, Wardah. Kindly stay online with us. We've also been joined by Dr. Nazeer Ahmed
Yeah.
Bandija. He's a social activist. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, what are the important measures that need to be taken now that we have seen the devastation across Pakistan, and of course the relief efforts also that are coming and pouring in, not only from within Pakistan but also from different parts of the world?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you, sir, for giving me opportunity to talk with you. Sir, actually, now people need their shelters and houses which were totally washed out in these pillars. We belong to district Laswela in Balochistan, which this district is also affected very badly. There were two pillars were appeared in our district in 25th July and 19th August, which affected very badly in our district. There are 10 districts were severely affected. Now people are living in critical situation. They do not have enough food. They have not roads to reach in cities. We know very well that people in Balochistan are living in distance. There are many kilometer distance between two roads. Our population area are very away from cities. They need ration, they need office shelters, and they do not have clean water to drink. They are still drinking the stored water of rain and flood. These water are stored in their fields, which we locally call sarai. They are drinking from these stored areas, which are very alarming conditions. People are facing different diseases like vomiting, diarrhea, and several children and women are dying, are facing severe health problems in Lakda, Bela, Utthal, and Saduri, as well as Gidadi. These areas are very badly affected, and they have no roads to reach there. Military forces and civil government is also doing their job very well, but actually they are in distance. There are no roads. In current situation, we have collected data from district administration of Laswela. There are almost 4,000 houses damaged totally, and 7,208 houses are damaged partially. Their livestock and crops are totally washed away. The people of Balochistan, especially in district Laswela, depends on crops, agriculture, and their livestock, which were totally damaged. Almost 3,000 animals were washed away, from which goats, sheep, cattle, and camels were washed out, and the crops. Almost 12,500 acres of cultivated crops were washed away in district Laswela.
All right.
This is
Kindly stay
very
online
alarming
with Dr. Saab. Kindly stay online with us. We have to go back to Wardah. Noor, Wardah, you talked about a central database that we need to have. We need to know how many people have been affected. We need to know the amount of men, women, and children who are injured, who passed away, who are still present. What kind of problems they are confronted with. In all of this process, how long do you feel the database could be processed, and how important is it also going to be for any or probable future calamity that could affect any part of Pakistan?
I guess Pakistan needed to work on the data system a long time ago, but better now than never. So if the database system that we are currently working on, it's not just for the immediate relief. So we can work on it from time to time. It will take a lot of time to create that central database system, but it will be very effective for the long term plans when we want to rehabilitate these communities, when we even for the short term, when we want to share the information with the other volunteers, with the civil government and the military forces about who needs the relief efforts more. And when in the long term another god forbids another crisis hits Pakistan, we need this centralized data system. One thing that I want to add is my institute KhudKaar is working with the IEC and who have worked with the park launch, and they are working on this centralized data system, and we need support from the government and military organizations. We need them to come on board with the private organizations like ours, who have the students who can work on the data and who have volunteers who can go and collect that data. But we need permissions, we need more data access from the government and military forces, because this is the data which is going to save us now and in the future. So I guess data is very important for both short term and long term relief, because right now the efforts are fragmented. We don't know where Russian is going. We don't know which organization is working in which area. We don't know where military help has reached and where civil government is intervening. There is no centralized database system. So I
So
think
it's very
I'll
important
request the
to
government.
create one such database system, and I think the efforts of
Yeah.
organizations such as yours, that is KhudKaar, are going to be paramount for the future of Pakistan, and also to understand which kind of demography and demographic structure is present in different parts of Pakistan. Thank you very much, Wardah Noor, to have joined us, founder KhudKaar. And finally, from you, Dr. Nazeer Ahmed Bandija, when it comes to Balochistan and the area that you belong to, Lasbela, and you've talked to us about the devastation that has been caused, how important is it for the people of Balochistan, of Lasbela, to also understand and educate themselves and have the technology necessary in order to not only know beforehand whenever any such calamity happens, but also to maybe have a proper infrastructure in hand with the help of the government and the armed forces and the private sector, so that they are not affected the same way as they have been this year?
Yes, sir. There are huge gap between government, civil government, and all private sectors which are working for welfare of people of flood victims in our province Balochistan. They need collaboration. They have to use technology for data collecting. Actually, the district administration of Lasbela started collecting data from flood affected areas with the help of army and different officers of different departments. They have started before 2 days, and they are collecting data, as well as PDMA issued their initial report of damages in our province Balochistan, but they need to utilize technology, as well as they have to collaborate with each other. There are almost 7 to 8 places are very affected in Lasbela, as well as 10 districts are affected in Balochistan, as well as the road, the main road which links Karachi and Quetta is washed away in 8 places.
All right.
Almost 83
Also, Dr.
kilometers.
Saab, you said there are areas in where you live in Lasbela that are not reachable as far as taking the aid to the people is concerned. Can the armed forces help through helicopters, to bring them aid to shelter or tents or even clean
Yes.
drinking water? Is there some kind of such an operation going on for those areas that are not reachable?
Yes, sir. Now they can do work easily. If they have vehicles like 4x4, they can go there. In early emergency response helicopters were used in our district regular, but the situation in our district is different from some province. Here, water do not stay in our place. This water will wash away in sea. There will not store in land, and people can reach there if they have heavy vehicles. They can approach the flood victims in our district, and the army is doing very well job, and they are supporting these people with the help of different social welfare organizations as well as religious organizations. They are working from last 2 months in our district.
All right, let's hope, Dr. Saab, that the necessary aid comes to those people, whether they are in far-flung areas that are not reachable normally, or to all the other people. A lot of different countries are pledging support to Pakistan. Even Pakistan is doing its utmost, whatever it can, through the provincial governments, through the federal government. Our Prime Minister is very adamant that the proper aid reach the people who have been affected. The United Nations will also be helping. Of course, Secretary General of the United Nations will be coming next week as well. And so far as the other countries are concerned, the aid is also trickling in to help those in need. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. I really hope that the people in your area, in Lasbela, in Balochistan, also in other areas of Balochistan and Sindh and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab are given and are provided with the necessary aid that is required because of the calamities that has hit all our country, that is Pakistan, or a majority of it at least. Stay strong to all of those people who are watching and who've been affected. We will help you, and we will continue to help you till such time that you are on your own 2 feet. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the first anniversary of Baba Hurriyat, Mr. Gillani. Mr. Gillani, who gave his life, who spent all his life for the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, for their right to self-determination, passed away a year back. To pay tribute to Shaheed Syed Ali Geelani, the icon of freedom for Kashmiris, our Prime Minister has paid a glowing tribute to him. So has the DGISPR, so have all the other sectors of the society. Also, there has been a march today for Shaheed Syed Ali Geelani Saab. Glowing tributes have been flowing in from all across the country, from all across Pakistan, from all across the world, as well as far as Shaheed Syed Ali Geelani is concerned, also known as Baba Hurriyat. To talk more about the work of Shaheed Syed Ali Geelani Saab and the legacy that he leaves behind, we've been joined by Dr. Mujahid Gillani. He's a Kashmiri. Dr. Gillani, thank you very much to have joined us. Not only are you related to Shaheed Syed Ali Geelani Saab, but you also carry on the work that he laid the foundations for, as far as working for the rights of Kashmiris is concerned. How important is that work for which he laid down the foundation?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, really grateful for having me once again. Most important thing that I believe as far as Syed Ali Geelani Sahab is concerned is the legacy that he has left us with. The most important thing once again is that we need to study his life. Back in 1929 when he was born until 2021, Syed Ali Geelani has given us several kind of lessons. And from his even personal life, back in the old days when he was studying in his primary classes, he used to walk at least 18 to 20 kilometers to his school, walk every day. So for once we understand that to him education was something that was very important. And traveling from Srinagar to ultimately Lahore, Oriental College Lahore, where he studied for a brief period of time. And this is lesson number 1. Education is very important. And education is very important if you're resisting a nation that is quite bigger than you. And then number 2, we understand that from 2002 till 2008, Syed Ali Geelani travels all across the state of Jammu and Kashmir, telling the people about what exactly India is, what exactly the occupation means. And this is what it is. He actually delivered his message personally. He told his own story, and he told the stories of the Kashmiris that have been suffering under the occupation for the past several years.
True.
Lesson number 2. The lesson number 3, from 2010 till 2021, Syed Ali Geelani remained under house arrest. His own house was considered as a sub-jail, and many of his lovers were not allowed to meet him, even the closest of the family. So this is lesson number 3. Even if you have to give away your own family for the cause, even if you have to sacrifice not being able to see your own grandchildren for the cause, for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, so be it. He had this principle, he had this legacy, and this is what Syed Ali Geelani gave us on the 1st of September 2021, when his dead body was wrapped and draped in the Pakistani flag. Although I understand that even the closest of the family were not allowed to offer his burial services, but then this is the message that whatever goes on, even your dead body must become a fear factor for the oppression, for the occupation.
How important is the mission of Shaheed Syed Ali Shah Gillani Sahab?
I would actually term it in a very small and short phrase, Gillanism. See, if you study his life and then the mission that he actually transferred to the younger generation of Kashmir, Gillanism is something. We see a peaceful life back in the 1950s and 1960s when he used to be an ustad actually. And then from 60s to 80s, when he was a political activist getting arrested in his youth, he spoke about the Indian occupation vehemently, and then even on the assembly floors. And then post 1990, we see a stalwart leader who knew what the Indian occupation would really do in the futures. So this is kind of a mission that we need to understand throughout his life. You can speak about the occupation peacefully, that is just sitting on your desk and speaking about it. You can actually be very more vocal about this occupation, going out on the roads, even going for the stone pelting, which the Kashmiri youths have been doing for the past several years. And then you can actually talk about Aslaha, Islam, and you can, these are his words, these are the words written in his book. Aslaha and Islam and Ittihad, these are the words spoken by Syed Ali Geelani himself. This is the legacy and this is the mission, that we need to have these phrases in our minds and in our brains while setting up any action that we do.
How strong is the resolve of the Kashmiri leaders, of the Kashmiri people, of the Kashmiri children, the youth, especially that Syed Ali Shah Gillani Shaheed Sahab stood for in this day and age, when even today we hear of 5 more innocent Kashmiris who've been killed in extrajudicial killings in 2 incidents in Shopaiya and Sopore. Every day there is an incident, every day there is an increase in oppression as far as the people of an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. They cannot breathe properly, they cannot operate properly, they cannot live their lives properly. What measures should be taken or could be taken by the people, by the leaders of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir themselves, those who understand the legacy, who understand the mission of Syed Ali Shah Gillani Shaheed Sahab?
See, unfortunately, the ground realities have become very grotesque now. For once, you're absolutely right. The Kashmiri cost for this freedom struggle has risen tremendously. Every day we lose at least 2 to 4, 5, even 10 to 20 youth on the ground. But once again, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, ever since 2016, have been fighting this war against the occupation, against the oppression, knowing what the end result could be. But once again, if you have been pushed against the wall, that is a limit. You have been pushed against the wall. All that you have is your own life. All that you have is your own words, your own blood that you can actually give to this freedom struggle. And that is what the Kashmiris are doing, with a leader or without a leader, with the Jummah prayers being allowed or the Jummah prayers being restricted. The Kashmiris have a clear vision, a clear destination, that this is an occupation. We're not asking for Article 35A 370, we're asking for Azadi.
Right to self-determination, basically the right to decide what you want to do with your lives.
Absolutely. And that is what Syed Ali Geelani had already envisioned, and he had told the people very clearly that a time will come when India will try to make a demographic shift in the Jammu and
And that
Kashmir.
is what is happening as we speak.
That is a leader for
the
you.
voting rights that are being given to all the non-resident Kashmiris, and that will completely change the demography in the months or the
Absolutely.
years to come.
Absolutely, and this is what Syed Ali Geelani had envisioned already, and not only envisioned, he had also told the people, conveyed it to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, that a day will come, this is what the occupation is planning to do, and it has come.
All right, Dr. Mujahid Gillani, how important has been Pakistan's diplomatic, moral and political support to the Kashmir cause, to the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and to this mission of Syed Ali Shah Gillani Shaheed Sahab?
See, I believe that Syed Ali Geelani Sahab's slogan of Hum Pakistani hain, ye Pakistan hamara hai, actually summarizes the answer to this question. But then we must understand that yes, Pakistan in fact conferred the Nishan-e-Pakistan to Syed Ali Geelani Sahab, one of the highest civilian awards. And not only that, the government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir also had awarded him with a presidential medal. But for a person who has been living in the hostile environments, whose own house was considered as a sub-jail, these awards, these certificates, these shields, perhaps they don't really matter. But what matters is a very strong voice that should come across from the border and across the borders as well. And the most important thing for Syed Ali Geelani Sahab, particularly in the early 2000s, was his firm voice and principles. He never compromised on his principles. Whatever he said from day one was there at the day 10, at the day 100th as well. And this is what had happened back in the early 2000s when he had said that I am a bigger Pakistani than any Pakistani living in Pakistan. More or less, these were his words. So we must understand that Pakistan needs to convey the message of Syed Ali Geelani to the rest of the world in more or less exactly the same words that Syed Ali Geelani Sahab has been uttering for the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years. If he has been able to speak up that Hum Pakistani hain, ye Pakistan hamara hai, in front of the 900,000 soldiers who were actually armed to teeth, Pakistan, I believe, has a lot of playfield to go more with.
All right. The struggle, the strength, the determination of Syed Ali Geelani Sahab, how much do you see that in the Kashmiri leaders of today?
That's a very hard thing to actually ask. You see, we see Syed Ali Geelani Sahab as somebody who doesn't have a few children, I mean the blood ones, the blood grandchildren, or he has a family, the whole of Jammu and Kashmir. We actually have been looking up to him for anything and everything. And it's not just the freedom struggle. It's been even in our personal lives as well. It's been our decisions of whether I should be taking this as a thesis or whether I should be taking this as my discipline in the future. So for once, the people of Jammu and Kashmir idolize Syed Ali Geelani. Whatever message he has left us with through his books, through his audio messages, through his video messages, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, his lovers, his followers are trying to follow that. But Syed Ali Geelani has been a stalwart and iconic leader. And you don't really expect Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah or Allama Iqbal every other day.
True. That is true. But Dr. Mujahid Gillani, all the efforts, all the struggle and the determination of Syed Ali Shah Gillani Sahab, that he so put towards the Kashmir cause, towards the right to freedom and self-determination of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, how much of that has been understood by the international community as well? And do you feel that a year after his passing away, is that resolve that he left behind, that determination, that grit that he had, still reverberating somewhere in the international community?
Like I told you just a few moments back, in his life, in his own life, Syed Ali Geelani himself conveyed his own message. From 2002 to 2008, more or less, he traveled across the whole valley, across the whole state. See, delivering your own message in more or less your own words is very important. This is what we these days term as projecting the Kashmir story. And if that's not done appropriately, nobody is going to listen to you. True. Nobody listens to the rhetorics, to being the victimhood, to listening to, okay, fine, a few youth were murdered, martyred today again, once again. But then the world, the civilized world even, has a human fatigue, a conflict fatigue in it. Once we need to tell the world what and who was Syed Ali Geelani. Really tell them about his whole life struggle. Through his books even, we can translate them into English and then let the world know who Syed Ali Geelani was. One. Two, we need to understand that the message of Syed Ali Geelani was a very principled one. He was not flexible upon whatever he used to say, and whatever he did, he was never ashamed of it either. So number two is we need to be very stalwart about whatever we say and project. We don't need to be ashamed of whatever is going on in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, because you, the Pakistanis, the Kashmiri narrative is on the right side, is on the truth side. This is the narrative that needs to be projected into the international world, and this is the message of Syed Ali Geelani. Kashmiris want freedom from India. Kashmiris want right of self-determination, and that's it.
Our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says that Syed Ali Geelani Sahab is not an individual but the name of a movement and a mission whose slogan is Kashmir will become Pakistan. It has been enunciated by yourself as well, Dr. Gillani, during the course of our conversation right now. What should be the resolve now of your Pakistani brethren, of the Kashmiris across the world, and of the Kashmiris inside of India and in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
The Kashmiri diaspora living outside the state of Jammu and Kashmir, in fact now the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, have already been working on it. And post Burhan Wani incident, the Kashmiri diaspora has actually tried to project the Kashmir story in a very, very vehement way, in a very evidence-based, documented and video proofed, and every other media that they could have actually used for to project whatever is going on in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So I believe all of us need to work within our spheres, and those spheres will actually ultimately coincide with each other. For me, for example, if I'm a practicing physician, I have a lot to tell on the health rights violations going on in the IIOJK. For somebody who is a lawyer, he can actually speak a lot about the legal framework that has been going on in the conflict zone. And then we have the women activists as well. The whole women chapter of the Kashmir dynamics is so huge that you're going to find half widows in it, that you're going to find Kashmiri mothers who have given their sons into this. And in fact, those Kashmiri elder sisters as well who are looking for their brothers for the past several years. So we have chapters of Kashmir dynamics, and working within our own spheres, once we coincide and correlate with each other, this is what we have. We are going to present a huge book to the whole world, with Pakistan backing our stance morally, diplomatically, politically, and even I believe Pakistan needs to do even more with that. We, the Kashmiris, inshallah ta'ala, living outside Jammu and Kashmir, can become a very strong voice of the Kashmiris who are suffering.
We already, Dr. Saab, are a very strong voice of the Kashmiris. Me, myself being a Kashmiri, you all being the family of Syed Ali Geelani Sahab, and so many other Kashmiris, whether directly or indirectly, whether through their sermons, whether through discussions, whether through shows like mine, or whether through different kinds of action in order to apprise the people of the world of the struggle of the Kashmiri people in the held valley. We see Indian aggression every day, many times a day, on the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Is there any way that the Indian government can understand that what they are doing is completely against any norms, principles of humanity?
A very relevant question, Omar bhai. The point is, India perhaps will never listen to you, and India perhaps will never listen to the world either. But when you take a few concrete steps, the concrete steps, if I term them in the words of the president, ex-president, former president AJK, the BDS, the boycott, divestment and sanction. These are the three very important things to do with India. And India being a very huge, bigger economy, when a single country has the guts to do so, Malaysia did it. Malaysia and India, they had a palm oil trade agreement probably that was broken and cancelled, annulled. although whatever happened later on. But for a moment, Malaysia did do that. Even Turkey as well, they sided with Pakistan in their own narratives. So Pakistan needs to build up. See, I've already said that Pakistan is a very strong voice. But then right now, today, as we are talking live in your show, we're building a memory of Syed Ali Geelani on 1st September 2022, which India never allowed back in 2021. Not a single Kashmiri.
They even didn't allow him to be buried in the cemetery of martyrs as per his desire.
As per his desires. So you see the memory part of it. We are building a memory today. This show is going to stay there for a very, very long time. And this is going to keep hammering not only the youth of Pakistan, not only the youth of Kashmir, but also the authorities and the people who are in power, that yes, Syed Ali Geelani is a stalwart leader. Syed Ali Geelani is a message, and that message needs to be acted upon.
This message that you said needs to be acted upon, how much of it is currently being understood and appreciated by the non-Muslim lot within India? Do you feel there is a kind of an internal struggle within India, a sane struggle of the elements that understand the truth of what the barbarities are being perpetrated? And if so, can that movement be activated in collaboration with the Kashmiri diaspora across the world and within Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Yes, we must understand for once that India itself is a very artificial dominion, and the people living in Indian dominion themselves have risen against this autocratic and RSS-based regime that is currently right now governing India in the form of Narendra Modi. For once we see the Sikhs, they're demanding their own homeland. For once we see the areas beyond the chicken neck, they have also in fact rebelled against the Indian dominion. And yes, these are the people, although I understand that on a larger scale, perhaps Jammu and Kashmir is a defined conflict zone on the papers of United Nations and the rest are not. But on the practical and the ground reality, why not?
All right. The ground realities might be different for India, but this is what needs to be done on a global level, on a regional level, and within India itself. Thank you very much, Dr. Mujahid Gillani, to have joined us and to have elaborated more on the work, on the struggle, on the life of Syed Ali Geelani Sahab. A year after he's passed away, his legend, his legacy lives on, and that is what we need to do, ladies and gentlemen, to continue with that legacy that has been laid behind by Syed Ali Geelani Sahab. As our Prime Minister has said, he remains as relevant to the freedom struggle today as he was in life. May this struggle continue, and may the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir find their true right to self-determination better sooner than later. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new segment stories that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.